Christmas, everyone. Welcome to SJ Weekly for December 23rd, 2018. Today, I'm drinking eggnog. And you know what? I still don't like it. Didn't like it as a kid, don't like it now. I don't know if I said this last week or not, but I might as well just re-say it again. Due to my losing 2 weeks on YouTube, I'm going to be backlogged with some old stories for a little bit. So the next few weeks at least, I'll probably have a mix of older and newer stories for the weekly roundup. I hope you guys don't mind. So the first article is FBI raid at NSA employee's home reveals over 16 million dick pics. But before we actually talk about this, I'm sure you guys have seen this on social media. Before we actually talk about this, let's look at this ticker here, alright, on the top of the article. Read some of this. United Airlines pilot and co-pilot fired having loud sex together during flight. American tourist arrested for having sex with endangered sea turtles. Man gets plastic surgery and name change to date his ex-girlfriend after she obtains an order. Mother forced her son to swallow his own sperm after he was caught masturbating to gay porn. What the fuck? How come everyone is a degenerate now? What the hell happened? Let's get to this dick pic story, though. FBI agents have discovered an estimated 16 million pictures of men's genitals, also known as dick pics, during a raid on an NSA employee's home this week. And I guarantee you not one of them was mine, because contrary to public opinion, I've never actually put one out there. Federal prosecutors have charged Hillary Wang, a National Security Agency employee for 14 years, with theft of government property and unauthorized removal and retention of classified materials. It is believed Wang used her top-secret security clearance to illegally download an estimated 16 million pictures of sexual nature off of unsuspecting Americans' mobile phones and computers. This picture is of a woman who would probably do something like that, I'm not gonna lie. She is obsessed with big black penises and the small size of her Chinese boyfriend's penis. FBI agents seized 14 computers at Hillary Wang's home on Wednesday containing no less than 53 terabytes of illegally downloaded pictures and documents from the National Security Agency. One, why is it that whenever there's like a crazy sex offender out there, they always have like 30 computers or some ridiculous shit? Like, I've got 5, but I do a stream, I do a show, I have like an editing computer, I have a personal computer. You know, I have reasons to have 5 computers. But 14, really? And there's no way you can even, like, look at 53 terabytes of dick pics. That's enough to sustain you for something like 100 lifetimes if you just wanted porn. She's a good person, but it's impossible to have a 5-minute conversation without her wanting to show you a picture of some black guy's dick on her cell phone, a former co-worker told local reporters. Jesus Christ. You know, as funny as this is, there is a serious side to the story in that, people keep saying the NSA is not spying on you. No, the NSA is spying on you. It's very obvious they're spying on you. Every time you talk to Alexa or Siri or whatever, someone's recording that shit. Man sues his mother for breastfeeding him until age 12. Woman accused of stealing a pumpkin by hiding it in her vagina. Man's genitals stolen during trip to Thailand. This is a ridiculous site, I have to say. I think this is just one of those sites that reports the most ridiculous arrests or events out there. And speaking of things you don't want to see on a cell phone, I went through my boyfriend's phone and saw things I wasn't prepared for. Well, maybe don't go through your boyfriend's phone. Though to be fair, that's not completely accurate. Like, I've seen my girlfriend's phone. I allow her to see mine without any kind of a fight or anything. Like, when you're in a serious relationship, that sort of stuff isn't, it's not a big deal. Like, there's definitely an expectation of privacy. Maybe it's just the nature of our relationship. Maybe it's just how relationships progress. But my girlfriend and I, we've kind of made a pact not to lie to each other anymore. And things have generally been better. It's a weird balance. On the one hand, you can say, why don't you trust me? Why do you have to look through my phone? And on the other hand, you can say, well, you should be able to see anything. And in our relationship, we've landed on the side of, for both of us, we've landed on the side of you should be able to see anything. So we don't lie to each other anymore, and we just talk. And we share everything as much as we can. Okay, enough about my own personal shit. Let's actually read this garbage. I've always considered myself the cliche coffee shop meet cute girl. In my head, I'm too good for online dating, not desperate enough to scour Bumble, Tinder, and the like to try and snag a date. Well, obviously, I don't consider myself a cliche coffee shop meet cute girl. However, I do think I am probably too good for online dating. And that's got nothing to do with my quality as a mate or whatever. It's more that I have some respect for myself. It's not a matter of desperation. It's a matter of preferring to be single than stooping to a certain level. And that comes from being happy with yourself and being happy with your life as a single person. The people who talk about like marrying themselves or something ridiculous like that, they actually have it backwards. The point is that you have to be happy as an individual in order to be happy in a relationship, not to somehow fake a relationship to be happy as an individual. Meeting someone online doesn't make a relationship any less legitimate or any less real. No. However, meeting them on an app made for sex or hookups can definitely make the relationship a little bit less legitimate. In fact, it probably makes the relationship not a relationship you just think it is. And as we read this story, you'll find out that's exactly what she did. She meets this guy, he was an unfamiliar face. They had several good mutual friends. Looks like he's the perfect guy. Oh, we went to the same gym, same club, same coffee shop. Everything matches up. We were both drunk enough to start a conversation and spent most of the night making out on the dance floor. He seemed all right. This is where you know the relationship's going to go bad. And this is kind of the problem with millennial dating, is that a lot of younger people, and I sound like my fucking dad at this point because I'm not old, but I'm not young either. But let's say a lot of people my age and younger will put the cart before the horse. You know, you probably shouldn't be banging a new partner until like a month in my opinion. We went on our first actual date the next week. We got Chinese food, crashed a wine tasting, we have a lot in common. About a month in, we were exclusive, and a few weeks later, he was my bona fide boyfriend. Maybe this is something I'm still never going to understand, but isn't exclusive the same thing as being a boyfriend? I mean, if you're exclusive and he's not your boyfriend, well, there might be a problem. And then there's the first obvious problem. We spoke about the future. I rambled about travel and passion and adventure. Theo wanted to stay close to his family, settle in our hometown, bring up his kids, and send them to the same school he had gone to. I knew our future ideals didn't match up, but I told myself it was a problem for later. No, see, that's a problem for immediately. I will again bring up my own relationship. Maybe it seems a bit neurotic, but, you know, like the first week, I sat down with my current girlfriend and I said, listen, I'm only interested in a relationship, so I want to know that we line up. Just to save ourselves any kind of problems or heartbreak or anything in the future, let's make sure that we at least have the same basic idea of the future. And we did. I wasn't asking her for a long-term commitment 1 week in or anything, but I wanted to make sure that at least we had the same generalized vision of where our lives were going. Because if we didn't, I wasn't going to waste my time, and I don't think she should have had to either. The more time we spent together, the more I started to realize that while on paper we fit, perhaps in person we didn't. That's the big problem with doing things on dating apps or in hookup culture, is that you sound like you fit together until you realize you actually don't. Because you don't actually have any kind of serious foundation for the relationship to rest on. In the last few months, we watched a lot of Netflix, spent a lot of time in silence, my mind scrambling for conversation starters so we wouldn't be stuck in the awkward in-between. I did everything I'd sworn not to if I felt like a relationship wasn't right. I ignored the quiet periods, the decrease in date nights, and the fact that he stopped calling me beautiful. If a relationship is healthy, you can have quiet periods and not have it destroy things. Like, you can sit in the same room and both be reading a different book, or, you know, like, she's playing a video game and you're working on something, or you're playing a video game and they're watching, like, a different TV show on the laptop. Like, whatever, right? You can make silent periods work. Sometimes it's more important to just spend time with each other, even if it's in silence. But you have to be secure in your relationship to do that. Sex had never been a problem for us, so I decided that's how we'd fix things. This is absolutely not the way to go about fixing a relationship. Okay, this video has become a fucking relationship vlog, so I'm going to just skip over all this. This is getting ridiculous. Basically, he says something was wrong. It was him, not her. And then he would tell me when he was ready. Okay. Then she gets to the point where she gets his phone, looks through it. It turns out, as good as things were with me, they weren't as good as the best times he had had with his ex. He had seen his ex and hadn't told me about it. Alright, well, there you go. We had to talk. Theo and I broke up after a 4-hour-long conversation peppered with laughter and tears and genuine confusion about where we had gone wrong. We lay in his bed and decided that even though we weren't in love, we did love each other. You didn't love each other. And in fact, it seems like you do not know what love is. I think this is you deluding yourself. And the problem wasn't even that you looked at his phone, even though you did it without his permission. The problem was that you rushed the relationship, and you thought that using hookup culture to enter into a long-term relationship would actually work. I generally consider myself, left of center, but the only place that I guess I would put myself on the right of center on the spectrum is when it comes to romance and relationships, really. Because it just seems like sometimes people my age and younger, like 20s and 30s, they don't fucking understand how and why every single relationship they get in fails. And 9 times out of 10, it's because they turn a one-night stand into a relationship and then wonder why it doesn't work out. It just seems like people don't know how to connect anymore. And that's kind of sad. Of course, there are problems after you do the connecting as well. Racist woman hater spat in baby's face and shouted white people shouldn't breed. Holy fuck, dude. Razez Abdullah spat in a 9-month-old baby's face. A man has been spared jail. No. He should be in jail. He assaulted a child. He's been spared jail after he spat in a 9-month-old baby's face and shouted white people shouldn't breed. You know what? Even under this is in the UK. Yeah, it's in the UK. This is a hate crime under UK law. He targeted Layla Jean in her pushchair last January in South Shields while she was out with her mother, Rebecca Telford. He approached without warning, leant into the pushchair, and spat. Prosecutor Emma Dowling told the court that he then made his racist comment before walking off. When Rebecca confronted him, he told her to shut the fuck up, then walked off. Abdullah, who has 2 previous convictions for race-hate attacks on white females, was later tracked down through CCTV. Maybe the anti-white shit that the UK seems to be pulling right now, combined with the anti-woman shit that Islam brings over whenever it comes to the UK, is brewing up a serious problem that needs to be addressed. Abdullah from South Shields was convicted of racially aggravated common assault after a trial at South Tyneside's, is it Tyneside? I don't know, Magistrates Court, which he did not attend. He didn't even show up to his own trial. He was given 8 months suspended for 18 months with rehab and mental health treatment requirements. Well, that's letting him off easy, isn't it? But to punish him even further, it would be Islamophobic after all. Muslims demand full legal protection from Islamophobia. Pressure builds on party leaders to recognize racism targeting Muslimness. Okay, everyone, say it with me. Islam is not a race. Muslim organizations are urging Theresa May, Jeremy Corbyn, and all other party leaders to adopt a newly proposed working definition of Islamophobia in an attempt to put pressure on a reluctant Home Office to follow suit. Well, that did go through in Canada, and it's complete bullshit here. It'll be complete bullshit there. The definition was set out in a report published by a cross-party group of MPs last week, and says Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. I've been meaning to do a video on this topic for a while, I just haven't gotten around to it. But to be honest, I know what the casual person believes when they think of Islamophobia. They think of hatred against, a generic brown person with a beard. Because they're brown and because they have a beard. So I can see why they consider it to be a form of racism. But that's more like racism against Arabians or Persians or something. And because there's this overlap, people are taking legitimate criticisms of the actions of Muslim individuals or the beliefs of Islam as if those were racist against people who have, generic brown skin and a beard. And that's why this qualifies as a form of weasel words, not because it's okay to be racist against that type of person. It's not, but because the word Islamophobia allows them to conflate that type of legitimate racism with criticism of very real, very dangerous actions. A Muslim woman described how a lit firework was posted through her letterbox in her home in Wales. A student in Sheffield was abused on public transport and no one intervened to stop it. A newly launched website in support of the definition includes the example of a Muslim mother who was allegedly attacked by 3 women for wearing a headscarf as she walked to a primary school in South London. If these 3 events actually happened, then they're obviously unacceptable, but they cannot be used to stifle legitimate criticism of Islam, or to excuse the terrible actions of individual Muslims. Since the year is coming to a close, let's take a look at an article from the very beginning of 2018. It's January 9th, 2018, in fact. California Today. 100 million dead trees prompt fears of giant wildfires. The more than 100 million trees that died in California after being weakened by drought and insect infestations have transformed large swaths of the Sierra Nevada into browned-out tree cemeteries. In some areas, more than 90% of trees are dead. This week, a group of scientists warned in the journal Bioscience that the dead trees could produce wildfires on a scale and of an intensity that California has never seen. Mark A. Finney, an expert in fire behavior for the U.S. Forest Service and an author of the study, says California's forests are much more vulnerable now because, paradoxically, they have been better protected. In their natural state, forests were regularly thinned by fire, but the billions of dollars that the state spends aggressively fighting wildfires and restrictions on logging have allowed forests to accumulate an overload of vegetation. And let's jump to right now. Same outlet, New York Times. Fact check Trump's misleading claims about California's fire mismanagement. On Twitter, the president claimed that the state's wildfire woes are a result of poor forest management. The truth is more complicated. Well, is it? Because that's exactly what you claimed in your own article a year ago. It's right here. As Californians were fleeing the huge wildfires that have left both ends of the state ablaze, President Trump took to Twitter over the weekend, blaming the infernos on forest management and threatening to withhold federal payments from the state. But wasn't it because of forest management? I mean, U.S. Forest Service says that California's forests are much more vulnerable because they have been better protected. The state too aggressively fights small fires and has too many restrictions on logging. It's in your own article. You know, this whole thing makes me think of the video yesterday about Tim Squirrel, where he had no idea of the concept of controlled exposure, where you expose people to things that may damage them, but in a controlled way in order to make them stronger over time. I made the remark yesterday that people who are on the far left generally believe in overprotection rather than controlled exposure, which is why you get a bunch of 40-year-old snowflakes who can't handle the reality of the world. They don't understand that, you know, a controlled burn is what allows them to shake off all the dead excess and then reemerge as a stronger being. And not only do they not understand that on a personal level, that lack of understanding is actually being played out in the world with an absolutely devastating cost. Here's an older article from 2016 from our good friend Jessica Valenti. Don't tell her to smile. The subtle sexism still facing Hillary Clinton. This was back during the election. Explicit sexism against the Democratic frontrunner might be unacceptable, but subtler forms of prejudice are everywhere, and women have had enough. As Hillary Clinton was giving her victory speech after Tuesday night's primaries, MSNBC host Joe Scarborough tweeted out two sentences that nearly every American woman has heard some version of at one point in her life. Smile, you just had a big night. Women on the internet were, to put it lightly, not amused. Yes, I know, you know, don't tell women to smile, it's sexist. Hillary Clinton shouldn't have to smile unless she feels like it. Yeah, you know, that's fair, that's fine. You know, don't judge a woman based on her public appearance in general. You know, that's a very good rule to live by, I think, especially if they're in politics. And here's Jessica Valenti quite recently. I'm sorry, Laura Loomer is 25 years old? This is like when I found out how old Stephen Miller was. There's not enough retinol in the world to save your face from being a racist asshole. I genuinely thought she was like in her late 40s. Same. I thought she had a good 10 years on me. I don't know, Jessica, maybe you should tell Laura Loomer to smile. It might make her look better, right? Let's end today's video on an article that I cannot believe The Guardian actually published. Debate ends when we label views we simply disagree with as hatred. To kill off discussions on difficult subjects will only give rise to loathing and bigotry. Yeah, exactly. When you deplatform someone that's a Nazi, or someone that you even just call a Nazi, whether or not they're actually a Nazi, all you're saying is that you can't discredit their argument. You don't give yourself the chance to show that your ideas are better, are more valid than theirs are. When you deplatform Nazis, they don't go away, they just go unopposed. And then they retreat to their own insular communities and build an echo chamber. But when you show them to be the ridiculous fools that they are, to their face, in public with a crowd watching, you destroy their ideology. Of course, all the people currently doing the deplatforming, namely the social justice warriors and the far left, would get absolutely destroyed in an open debate as well, which is why stuff like Sargon getting banned from Patreon is happening in the first place. It is better to debate a question without settling it than to settle a question without debating it. This is the most reasonable thing The Guardian has ever published. How naive that sounds today. In this age of echo chambers and filter bubbles, it is, many insist, better to settle a question than to debate it. Better to be certain that one is right than to risk being proved wrong. On perhaps no issue has the question of what can or cannot be debated been more sharply contested than that of transgenderism. How should society and the law look upon people who were born male but see themselves as female? Trying to answer that question has led to bitter confrontations between trans activists, determined to secure full rights for trans people, and gender-critical feminists, worried that the notion of what it is to be a woman is being transformed to the detriment of women's rights. And here you are, this guy, in one succinct paragraph, described the entire phenomenon of social justice warriors eating themselves and descending into a purity spiral. For trans people, the freedom to define themselves is vital. To question, as many feminists do, whether a trans woman is really a woman, is, activists insist, to threaten the individual's identity. It does irreparable harm by subjecting trans people to mental trauma. I deeply resent the idea that my identity gets to be debated in the first place, wrote the American activist Jennifer Finley Boyan. Well, let's be honest here, everyone's identity gets to be debated at some point in their lives. Every time somebody tells, say, a YouTuber to get a real job, that is a form of denying their identity. Anytime somebody tells you that you aren't what you think you are, whether or not they're actually right about that, that's debating an identity. If you're a man watching this, how often has somebody said to you that you're not a real man over something? If you're a woman watching this, how many times have you been called not a real woman? This stuff happens all the time. Identities are debated at least on some level because most of the time you have to do something to earn an identity. If you have an identity as a doctor, you have to work your way to becoming a doctor. You can't simply identify as a doctor. If you have an identity as, say, a mother, that requires you doing certain things to become a mother. And yes, even with gender, there are things that men and women do to be considered men and women. And you know what? There are many trans people out there who are willing to work for that identity. They were born male, they have penises, and they say, you know what? I want to be a woman, and I will put my heart and soul into becoming that. And if you're willing to put in effort, most people will respect you for that. If you're quite literally just a guy with a beard and a dress, and you put no effort into actually trying to be the gender you want to be, then no, you have not earned the identity. Nonetheless, there are reasonable arguments on both sides of the debate. There are also unreasonable arguments on both sides. That's what makes it a difficult issue. Simply saying this, however, is itself taken by many to be transphobic. It is bigotry, trans activists insist, to question the validity of self-identification or to object to trans women being allowed into women's-only spaces. And this is why things become as ridiculous as they have become. Sometimes, during a debate, somebody can say something that's beyond the pale. Somebody can say something that you may object to morally, or you may say that that was exceedingly impolite or something. You can even be disgusted by it. But because we now take simply the idea of debate itself as an offense so great that it needs to be squashed, with government interference if necessary, that it really seems like our societies are becoming increasingly tyrannical. To suggest that these kinds of questions should not be asked is to suggest that it is better to settle questions than debate them. The trouble is, questions are rarely settled without debate. People raise certain issues not because they are bigots, but because of the realities facing women in society. Whatever one thinks of their arguments, these realities will not disappear simply by labeling critical feminists hate mongers. All it does is to cheapen the meaning of hatred, making life easier for the real bigots, and to eviscerate public debate. This guy is very clearly on the left, maybe even the hard left, and yet this is the perfect article in regards to the far left's stifling of freedom of speech. That's it for me, my friends. Everyone have a Merry Christmas. Of course, I will be putting out daily videos during Christmas. I really want to keep my main SFO channel at one video a day, even if they are just little short ones sometimes. However, tomorrow and the next day, on the 24th and the 25th, I'm going to be doing some longer than usual gaming streams on Game Boomers, twitchtv.gameboomers. I'll be playing some Christmas games and generally celebrating the holiday cheer. So if any of you guys find yourself without a family to go see this year or something, like you're stuck at work or whatever, you can always feel free to pop in and celebrate Christmas with my girlfriend and I. I hope to see you there. I love you.